They say that dogs are man's best friend, and in Stephen's case, this statement couldn't be truer. After years of serving on the police force, Stephen had formed strong bonds with several canine partners throughout his career. Yet none of these bonds compared to the connection he shared with Duke, a gentle German shepherd who quickly became more than just a work companion. He was family. Duke wasn't like the other police dogs Stephen had trained before. While most of his colleagues were fierce and energetic, ready to chase down suspects or sniff out contraband, Duke had a gentleness that set him apart. He was a year old when Stephen retired from the force, and even though the young dog still had years left in service, Stephen couldn't bear the thought of leaving without him. He approached his boss, hoping for a way to take Duke with him into retirement. To his relief, his boss understood their bond and granted him permission to adopt the dog. Despite his intimidating training as a police dog, Duke was a playful, cuddly pup who loved nothing more than being close to his family. Stephen's wife and children were initially hesitant about bringing Duke home. They worried that a dog trained to be a police canine might be too aggressive or difficult to manage. But Stephen reassured them that Duke was different, that he had personally trained him, and that the dog wouldn't hurt anyone. Soon, Duke's calm and loving nature won them over, and he quickly became a beloved member of the household. For the next few years, Duke settled into family life, becoming a faithful companion to Stephen and his family. The days were filled with long walks, playtime, and moments of affection. Duke was always by Stephen's side, following him wherever he went. But life had a way of taking unexpected turns, and the peaceful rhythm of their days would soon be interrupted by a terrifying accident that would change everything. One morning, like many others before it, Stephen and Duke set out for their daily run. The weather was crisp and the sun was shining, creating the perfect backdrop for their routine. Afterward, they returned home, ready for breakfast. As Stephen approached the house, he noticed the roof looked like it needed some repairs. A few tiles were missing, and the overall condition of the roof seemed worn down. After finishing breakfast, Stephen decided to gather his tools and take a look at the roof. Duke, as always, stayed close, following him around as he prepared to climb up. But just as Stephen began to ascend the ladder, Duke's behavior changed. The usually calm and obedient dog started barking, whining, and pulling at Stephen's trousers as if trying to stop him from going up. "Calm down, boy," Stephen said, gently pushing Duke aside, but the dog wouldn't relent. He kept tugging at Stephen's leg, his barking growing more frantic. Stephen's wife noticed the commotion and came outside to see what was happening. Seeing Duke's agitation, Stephen asked his wife to take the dog inside so he could concentrate on fixing the roof. Reluctantly, Duke was dragged back into the house, though he resisted the entire way. His paws dug into the ground as he whimpered, his eyes glued to Stephen as if he knew something terrible was about to happen. Barely 5 minutes later, a scream pierced the air. Stephen's wife and children rushed outside, only to find Stephen lying on the grass below the roof. He had fallen, his body twisted awkwardly on the ground. His wife's heart raced as she called out to him, but Stephen didn't respond. His eyes were closed, his body limp. While his wife cried out for him, their children quickly called for an ambulance. Within minutes, the paramedics arrived, rushing Stephen to the hospital. He was placed in critical care, where doctors performed extensive scans to assess the severity of his injuries. Although he had suffered scrapes, bruises, and a broken arm, it was the blow to his head that concerned the medical team the most. The impact of the fall had caused a severe head injury, and Stephen slipped into a coma soon after. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Stephen remained unresponsive, showing no signs of improvement. His family, desperate for a miracle, decided to bring him home, hoping that familiar surroundings might help him wake up. They hired a nurse to check on him regularly, ensuring he received the care he needed. But the person who never left his side was Duke. From the moment Stephen came home, Duke stationed himself at the foot of his bed, refusing to leave except for meals or to relieve himself. His once playful energy had diminished, replaced by a quiet sadness that mirrored the family's despair. He missed his owner deeply, often whimpering as he lay next to the bed, his eyes filled with longing. 2 years passed, and still, Stephen showed no signs of waking. The cost of his care was piling up, and his family was struggling with the decision of whether to keep him on life support. The doctors advised them that it might be kinder to let Stephen go, suggesting humane euthanasia to end his suffering. Stephen's wife was heartbroken. The love of her life, the man she had planned to grow old with, was lying in bed, trapped in a coma with no way out. After agonizing over the decision, she reluctantly agreed with the doctors, accepting that it might be time to say goodbye. They scheduled the procedure for the following day. As Stephen's wife discussed the arrangements with the medical team, Duke watched and listened from the corner of the room. The dog seemed to sense the gravity of the situation, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. The next morning, when the paramedics arrived to take Stephen to the hospital, Duke's behavior shifted again. The moment they entered the room, Duke began barking furiously, baring his teeth and growling at anyone who tried to approach his owner. His usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by a fierce protectiveness that surprised everyone. The paramedics, startled by Duke's aggression, refused to come any closer until the dog was removed from the room. Stephen's daughter stepped in, grabbing Duke by the collar and dragging him outside, despite his protests. As soon as Duke was outside, the paramedics quickly loaded Stephen into the ambulance and drove away. But Duke wasn't finished yet. The moment the vehicle started moving, Duke pulled free from his leash and bolted after the ambulance, running down the street as fast as his legs could carry him. Watching the scene unfold, Stephen's wife began to wonder if Duke was trying to tell them something. She remembered how the dog had acted strangely before Stephen's fall and how he was behaving the same way now. Fear gnawed at her. Had they made a terrible mistake? Gripped by a sudden urgency, she jumped into her car and followed Duke to the hospital. By the time she arrived, Duke was already inside, having somehow found his way to Stephen's room. There, she witnessed something incredible. Just as the doctor was about to inject Stephen with the euthanizing drug, Duke burst into the room, knocking the doctor to the floor and causing the syringe to roll away. The room fell silent, everyone too stunned to react. Then, a sound broke the stillness, the steady beeping of Stephen's heart monitor. The readings on the screen were picking up, indicating a change. Moments later, a quiet, raspy voice cut through the silence. It was Stephen. "Leave the dog alone," he whispered, his voice weak but unmistakable. Tears welled up in Stephen's wife's eyes as she realized what had just happened. Against all odds, Stephen had woken up. Duke, with his unwavering loyalty, had somehow known that his owner was still there, still fighting. It was a miracle. The doctors quickly attended to Stephen, running tests to confirm that he was stable. Over the next few weeks, Stephen's recovery began. It was a slow process, but with each passing day, he regained more strength. Duke never left his side, his loyalty and love evident in every wag of his tail. When Stephen was finally discharged from the hospital, it was Duke who greeted him first, jumping up and showering him with kisses. Stephen knelt down and hugged his dog tightly, overwhelmed with gratitude. He knew that if it hadn't been for Duke, he might not have survived. This remarkable story spread far and wide, a testament to the deep bond between man and dog. Duke had not only been Stephen's partner in the field, but had also become his protector, his healer, and his savior. It was a reminder that sometimes animals understand far more than we give them credit for, and that their love can be a powerful force for good. Stephen's family was forever changed by the experience. They had come so close to losing him, but Duke's unwavering loyalty had given them a second chance. From that day forward, they knew to trust in Duke's instincts, recognizing that sometimes all we need to do is listen to our pets.